Okay, here we are under the front of the car. All of the floor pans, as you see, are very solid, no rusting or anything significant for damage, no repaired parts or previous rust issues. Fresh shocks all around, fresh bushings here as well, as you can see. Properly greased steering rack there. There's the other bushing and shock. We'll flip around to the back. Okay, now we're under the car on the engine side. We have these nice side dump exhausts, the chrome tips, which look really sharp. Those are quite good condition. No leaks or major rusting going on, anything like that. No leaks under here. Rather clean oil pan. Transmission also. We've got a fresh mount up there. And the rear shocks are fresh. Brake lines look to be about 10 years old also. Would have been done with the rest of the restoration work. Here's the driver rear shock over here. Axle tubes looking good. And then these ventilation ducts are in good order also. As a bit of previous sealant, not even the size of my hand here, on the passenger rear floor pan area. Elsewise, everything very, very solid under here. Jack points right here are looking good. A close-up shot of that for you. As I mentioned, the car had been restored about 10 years ago by Shelton Racing and Performance of St. Louis, Missouri. I was actually able to speak with Mr. Al Shelton on the car. He does vaguely remember it, having restored many cars over a 30-year career with primarily vintage Volkswagens. But he does indeed remember the car and was able to tell me a bit more details about it and just some neat history. Okay, here we have the 67 Beetle. This lovely purple color. I guess it only goes well on this particular car. I don't know of many other cars that you can get away with this purple and it still looks nice. So that's kind of fun. About 10 years ago, the car was fully restored by a well-known Volkswagen specialist in St. Louis, Missouri. Al Shelton. There's some stickers on the windows honoring his shop, Shelton Racing and Performance. He sold it through a car show, actually, to a gentleman who just had to have it after seeing it, who only owned it for maybe 18 months, something like that, and sold it to a local gentleman here to us in Wisconsin, who has owned it the rest of the years, 8 or 9 years there. And in that amount of time, about 12,000 miles have been put on it since the restoration. It's definitely a lovely car. It's a sorted out driver's car. It does have a few blemishes here and there and things like the paintwork. I can try and point out a few things like that to you now. Like down here, if you get really close to the fenders, you can see just a couple of rock chips, but you know, they're things like that to be expected with a car that has some mileage put on it after restoration. However, on the front right fender here, there was a bird strike, if you will. The owner struck a turkey, I guess he said, and a little bit of paint damage to the fender there, but nothing critical. Overall, it shows very nicely. It drives perfectly. An awesome machine. It has the 1641 engine in it, so it's a little bit more powerful than a factory 67 would have been. Under the engine cover here, we can take a look at the upgraded alternator. In the last year, it has received a new distributor, plug wires, spark plugs. It's got the dual Weber ICT 34 carburetors, which give it a decent amount of pep without being ridiculous. As I understand, the car did second place in the St. Louis Volkswagen meets when it was under the ownership of Al Shelton. It's sitting on some larger wheels. In the rear we have 205/70/15s Firestones with Porsche hubcaps throughout. The tires are about 1.5 years old with 2,000, maybe 3,000 miles on them at most. Up front we have some Ultra HP4s, which are a 215 65 15-inch. When the car was restored, as I mentioned about 10 years ago, every trim was removed, dash instrumentation, things like that, all was removed to allow for painting of the interior body as well. The door cards look really sharp, kind of with this burlap built into the vinyl there. The seats are from a different car. I'm not sure exactly what they're from, but they have a tan cloth cover on them. They're not ripped or anything, but these aftermarket seat covers are installed just to kind of give it some vintage flair. We've got the paisley floor mats, but underneath the floors are very, very solid. Floor mat out of there, we'll take a closer look. Floors are all very, very solid, no rust or anything going on. It features a shopping cart wheel style accelerator, which at my first glance was unusual, but after driving with it for a bit, it actually feels really nice. It has a lockout style shifter. You just pull up on the trigger to access reverse. And it's a standard 4-speed H-pattern shifter. The tachometer, speedometer, fuel tank gauge, radio, all of that stuff is functional, including the indicator lights behind the speedometer. There's also a thermometer and a compass added to the dash here, which is kind of neat. Interior-wise, carpeting very, very nice, as I mentioned, under the floor mats. Floors are very solid. Interior carpeting still very nice. The headliner is still very attractive. A nice white look to it, no sags or discoloration, any problems with that. And here we have the glove compartment. Again, everything painted nicely. All of the fasteners and things were removed at the time of restoration. Okay, and then we have windshield wipers. The back seat, I believe, to be original, or at least original styled. The carpeting underneath is all very nice, very clean. A couple of little rubber floor mats here. And again, with the sort of burlap look under the kick panels here. There's a tiny little rip at the very edge of this seat, but elsewise the top of it looks fantastic. It's still very soft and supple, very well sprung. I'll try and climb in here a bit. I can show you the speakers. Jensen speakers are mounted in this trim piece here. Here's the seat there. And then underneath the speakers here, you can kind of reveal this. We have the carpeted area back here with a large speaker setup, subwoofer set up with 2 speakers on this nice little tray thing, and little fold-outs to cover the back area nicely. Again, the headliner is very nice. Got the sun visors also. We have the period correct Volkswagen branded lap belts in the front, and then the rear belts are also the proper variety with like the circular drums for those. So there's 2 full belts in the rear. Door hinge areas are really nice. All of the weather seals, rain seals on the windows, the doors, all of that is nice. There's no leaks on the car. All of the trim pieces are in good order, still very bright and polished. Again, the door cards, like I mentioned, are really attractive, and all of the switches and things, the window, the door locks, the handles, all of those function inside and out very nicely. Let's go ahead and demonstrate the lighting. We have our turn signal there, and right turn signal, and then with the headlights on here, we have the blue light there for the high beam, and toggling on and off for that. Okay, let's start it up and have a listen. Up here we have a full-size spare. Here's the driver for the JVC radio setup. A couple of spares in here for things like a small fire extinguisher, always good to have with a collector car. A couple of extra plug wires. A spare belt for the alternator. Some additional sun visors there. This is a fun little dealio that was made for the back of the car license plate area. Volkswagen Club of Sheboygan, Wisconsin, in the same color matching purple. Nice little marker to put somewhere on your car during shows, things like that. Underneath the hood, or front bonnet cover, you could say, you have the same vinyl with burlap, which looks really sharp. Carpeted in here really nicely. If I just peel that back, you see the little bit of wiring going on for the radio. That's not the most tidy job, but it's terminated nicely with proper connections and things like that. But overall in here, the steel for the inner fenders and the sort of firewall area up here is really well kept. The hood stay springs are in good shape, enough that it supports the hood very nicely. No sagging or anything like that going on. And again, all of the trims and strips were removed during the restoration, so it still shows nicely. No overspray on any of those.